What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for September 23rd, 2022. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. And I thought this was a very good edition of SmackDown on Friday. The three biggest things they advertised coming into the episode, that being the Braun Strowman in-ring return against Otis, the Bloodline segment, the return of Roman Reigns, and the Undisputed WWE Tag Team title main event, all delivered. And everything else in the middle wasn't exactly enthralling or exciting or overly great or anything along those lines. But they set stuff up for next week, including 3 different matches, which are obviously subject to change per as the WWE protocol, whether it's Vince McMahon or Triple H. It happens all the time. They set up stuff for next week, set up stuff for Extreme Rules, and they just delivered an overly enjoyable show. I thought the 2 hours flew by, and it made for a pretty good show. So what was advertised coming in and what mattered most delivered, making what I thought was a thumbs-up show. Making for a thumbs-up show, rather. So we'll start from the beginning here with the best part of the entire show. They peaked early, as is usually the case with SmackDown, with the return of Roman Reigns, the first appearance of Roman Reigns on SmackDown since before Clash of the Castle. He was here on the show for the first time surrounded by the rest and the entire Bloodline. That including the Usos, Paul Heyman, Solo Sikoa, now without the NXT North American Championship after what happened on Tuesday, which was dumb, and the honorary Uso himself, Sami Zayn. They were all there, addressing Logan Paul, addressing their current goals and ambitions, and Roman kind of formally welcomed Solo into the group. And you thought that was at the end of the segment. I thought it would be, okay, it's a good, solid segment to formally introduce Solo as part of the Bloodline. And then Sami speaks up. And Sami says, I would also like to formally acknowledge my tribal chief, Roman Reigns. And Roman shoots him this look and says, what are you even doing out here? Why are you wearing that shirt? Take off our shirt. And honestly, it wasn't, you could hear boos for Roman because people have grown to love Sami Zayn as part of the Bloodline, and rightfully so. He's amazing in this role. Honestly, watching this segment, it felt like you could hear more uncomfortable silence than you could boos or cheers or any other sort of reaction. Because honestly, it reminded me a lot of the Festival of Friendship when Owens turned on Chris Jericho 5.5 years ago on Raw, one of the better Raw segments in the last decade, if not of all time. There were boos for Owens attacking Jericho, obviously, but it was very much the same thing where Jericho had grown to be so entertaining in that role alongside Kevin Owens, where he was just, you couldn't help but root for the guy in that role. And Sami Zayn has been that guy for quite some time as part of the Bloodline. Now, the end game, as was the case with Jericho back in the day, the end game was always going to be the Bloodline, and will be the Bloodline turning on Sami. It's more a matter of when than if. And honestly, Roman's acting here made me think that we were going to get it. And Jay was pissed. He was waiting for Roman to turn on Sami, and he was chomping at the bit to beat the shit out of Sami Zayn. And Roman even told Jay to take Sami's shirt off. He went over to Sami, ripped the shirt off because he was wearing that classic Bloodline tee. And instead, Roman turns the tables in a great plot twist and gives him a new Sami Zayn honorary Uso shirt instead. Gives him a hug. Sami's all elated, saying, I acknowledge you, my tribal chief, whatever. Such a great fucking segment. This was tremendous television. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. This is not a bold statement. This is not anything new, anything out of the ordinary, nothing you haven't heard already from various other people. This stuff with the Bloodline, and specifically Sami's involvement in the Bloodline, has made this, and is undoubtedly to me, the best thing going in WWE today. On Raw, SmackDown, NXT, any brand, doesn't matter. And including a lot of parts of AEW as well. And there's a lot of good stuff going on in AEW. But this Bloodline storyline is far and away the best thing in the entire company. It's fantastic. Sami's role in this entire storyline has been spectacular. You know it's coming at some point. You thought this might be the night after his incompetence last week, losing to Ricochet and, kind of accepting the challenge from Logan Paul and Roman Reigns' behalf because Roman wasn't there. Just the attention to detail is awesome. And when that time comes, when they turn on Sami, and I hope it's at a time when we least expect it, it's going to be tremendous. So I thought this was awesome. And again, the rest of the show was good, but this was far and away not only the best thing going in the entire company, but the best thing on this show specifically. Our first match on the show saw Liv Morgan, the SmackDown Women's Champion, take on Lacey Evans in non-title action. Good match here, mostly dominated by Lacey. And it's honestly quite comical to me that Evans, when Vince McMahon was running the show, was one of the more featured players on that brand, or on really either brand, because Evans has had a very weird fucking year. She was out for well over a year due to pregnancy. She was reintroduced on I think the SmackDown right after WrestleMania. They had those series of what I thought were great vignettes, kind of, peeling back the curtain and showing us an inside look at her real life and her struggles. They used that as kind of a way for people to boo her because she was using that as a crutch as a character, which I kind of felt uncomfortable with, but I could see what they were going for. She played the role well, and I wasn't a big fan of turning her heel. I thought that was really dumb because I thought they had something with her as a face, and one crowd at Money in the Bank booed her. Whoop-de-fucking-do. I feel like that was always the plan to turn her heel, so they had her come across in a certain way anyway. But honestly, I felt like as a babyface the first time a few years ago, in late 2019, early 2020, she was getting over in that role. So Lacey Evans, the Patriot, could get over. I mean, there's a lot of mixed feelings about America right now, and rightfully so with everything that's going on in the last couple of years. But I feel like if portrayed the right way, it can work. They didn't portray it the right way because the intent from the get-go with Vince was to turn her heel. And then she turns heel. She came out, refused to face Aaliyah for a few weeks. She either got hurt or sick or had some other, other medical leave. There was another reason why she wasn't on TV. I don't know. She missed the last SmackDown, I think, before SummerSlam. And then she wasn't on the show for like a month and a half, for like 6-7 weeks. Now, I don't know if she could only miss that episode and then she couldn't be back until September, or if she could only miss that episode and then she could have been back a lot sooner, but Triple H had no plans for her. I honestly don't know. What I do know is that she's been back twice, first in the number one contenders match a few weeks ago and then again here, and she was treated like a total fucking afterthought. Maybe I skipped past her entrance because I watched on delay. Maybe I missed it, but they gave her, I thought, the jobber entrance here, and I could be wrong. She was just another woman in that 5-way a couple of weeks ago when she got eliminated by, I think, Ronda Rousey with ease. She's just another woman on the roster at this point. Not to say Lacey should be a featured player. I like Lacey. I actually do not mind Lacey as much as other people. But it is kind of comical that she was like doing that whole character and she was all over SmackDown and she was kind of pushed down the fans' throats as a face, heel, whatever, when Vince was running the show. But now that Triple H has taken over, he has no interest in no real, clearly no interest in renewing her push and putting her back on the same track she was on before. I'm not complaining, but it is quite surprising. So the match was whatever. Liv wins. The whole point of this match was to show that first Liv could win a match on her own, but also to send the message that she had that killer instinct needed to go to the extreme in her match with Ronda Rousey at Extreme Rules in a couple of weeks. So, Liv, the ultimate babyface, attacking Lacey Evans afterward with the kendo stick. Not exactly a babyface move, but I could see what they were going for. She needed to come across as more dominant. Her promo skills have kind of lacked to me lately. She just doesn't sound, not that she doesn't sound sure of herself, but she kind of puts on this like weird voice for her promo sometimes. Sometimes her promos are great. Some other times her promos are just not that great at all. She didn't talk on the show, I don't think, but, she had this performance. One, attacked Lacey afterward with what I thought was a cool looking bump, jumping off the top rope or the top turnbuckle on top of Lacey through a table at ringside. I thought that was cool, and it accomplished what it needed to. The New Days, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods quickly knocking off the Maximum Male Models, Massey and Mansois. This was less about the New Day winning, and the match was mere minutes long, and it was more about LA Knight kind of teasing tension with Massey and Mansois and his quote-unquote sister, Maxine Dupree, at ringside. I say LA Knight, that's what it's going to be. Fuck this Max Dupree bullshit. It's awful. They are clearly headed in that direction. 2 weeks ago, they did the tease in the WWE.com exclusive video on their website and on YouTube. Last week, he said something about LA in his promo while they were in Anaheim, and then kind of like looked off in the distance. That was no Easter egg. They're clearly building towards that, because again, he teased tension with them here after the Maximum Male losers lost. They lost, he got pissed at them afterward and walked off. People were booing him because he was being a jerk to these guys, but whether he's a heel, a babyface, or whatever, he needs to be LA Knight again, and he needs to be what he was in NXT. It doesn't even matter if he's a face or a heel, because he excels at either role. So I'm looking forward to that. Braun Strowman's first match back in WWE was against Otis. Now, you would think that they would put him in there with like a Chad Gable or whoever and have him squash said superstar. I'm actually glad they went this route instead. I don't think they've ever done Otis and Strowman before. It felt fresh. Otis was not quickly squashed. He actually got quite a bit of offense in, and they had a fun hoss fight. I mean, it probably would have been fine as a squash, and the crowd would have been into it, but they didn't completely bury Otis here, and he was made to look credible in defeat, which I really appreciated and was not expecting. There was one, weird spot where I think, Strowman couldn't get Otis all the way up for the powerbomb at the end, but, I mean, that's to be expected. Otis is a big guy. This was actually better than I thought it would be. The crowd was into it. They did the big man power move spots well, and it was actually quite good. So I thoroughly enjoyed this and thought Strowman came back with a strong start here in WWE as far as his in-ring portion of his career goes. So good stuff here, and we'll see where he goes from here. I don't know who his next feud's going to be with, who he targets next, whether it's a championship or a superstar, or if in the meantime they're just going to kill time until they can figure that out by having him beat up job guys. I'm not exactly sure, but for now it's nice to see that he's just on the show and getting over, so that's a plus. Drew McIntyre was out next, calling out Karrion Kross for attacking him last week, and he was pissed. He had a strap in hand, and honestly, I thought it was a fucking belt. I'm like, why does he have a belt with him? And then he made it clear he's challenging Kross to a match at Extreme Rules, but no ordinary match. It's going to be a strap match. And I honestly don't mind this. So I don't usually like when the first match in a feud is a stipulation match, but with the intensity of Drew, the intensity of Karrion, and it being extreme, I mean, if it was in any other pay-per-view, I'd probably say that was silly, but it's Extreme Rules. And they can't hold off on the match any longer because that's a pay-per-view worthy match, and they already didn't do it at Clash, although he first attacked Drew 2 months ago. So I think it's the right move to make, having that be a strap match. Hopefully it protects either guy in defeat. The segment itself was solid. The only thing I obviously did not like about it, as other people have said, was the fireball botch. The fireball stuff I'm never a major fan of, whether AEW does it, WWE. Kross himself did it already in NXT with Keith Lee. And I think it looked good, but that was also pre-taped. It was during the Performance Center era, I believe. It looked goofy here. They actually fucked it up, and it completely missed Drew. But they improvised, played off of that, and Drew no-sold it, but then Kross attacked him anyway. So they did a good job with that. It looks silly. I would hope they don't do the fireball shit again. Less of the supernatural bullshit, the better. Not that it's supernatural. And it's a classic wrestling thing. I mean, they've been doing it for decades, but just not a big fan of it. It never really looks great most of the time. But yeah, this was fine. It set up the match for Extreme Rules. That was what mattered. We had Raquel Rodriguez and Dakota Kai going at it, renewing their rivalry from NXT in a one-on-one match. Unfortunately, it was a very quick match, and it wasn't really about the match itself. This was total throwaway. This was over within maybe a minute or two, and so Bayley was about to help Dakota at ringside from ringside. Shotzi comes out, attacks Bayley, allows Raquel to capitalize, rolls up Dakota, and wins with a cheap roll-up win. So that wasn't exactly ideal. And listen, I know Triple H is trying to protect all these people on his roster. People got to lose clean at certain points. Dakota losing here really would not have hurt her. It's not really about Dakota as a single star as much as it is her and Io as a team. And if anything, I would protect Io more than Dakota. Not that Dakota should be losing all the time, but, the cheap finish was lame. The match was disappointing. This really just served to set up Bayley and Shotzi on SmackDown for next week. I'm done complaining about the brand split shit. At this point, it doesn't even fucking matter. I went on a big rant about it last week. At this point, who even cares? Well, we get to the main event. Undisputed WWE Tag Team titles on the line. The Usos defending against the Brawling Brutes is Ridge Holland and Butch. This was a very good match, as you would expect. The crowd wasn't overly into it, as you would expect as well, because it's two heel teams. The Brawling Brutes aren't exactly an endearing, popular team. Sheamus is far more of a fan favorite than either Butch or Ridge Holland are individually. I thought this was a good match, though, and I thought they did a great job of making at least me think that the Usos could lose here. They aired a vignette or a video package earlier in the show highlighting the historic reign of the Usos, back from when they won it in July of 2021 against the Mysterios, the SmackDown tag titles, that is, and then combining those with the Raw tag titles when they beat RK Bro back in May, becoming the Undisputed Tag Team Champions in the process. They also noted only two teams stand in their way of being the longest reigning tag team champions in WWE history. That being the New Day, who hold the record at 400 and I think 82 days, 81 or something days, and Demolition, who only have a couple days short of that. I think the Usos are at 460, 470 something, I think. I think they'll break the record in a couple months, and a couple weeks rather, not even months, mere weeks. If they can hold those belts for another 2 or 3 weeks, they break the record. Maybe they'll face the New Day again, and it'll be like when the New Day broke the record a couple years ago, where if they can beat these three teams, they'll break the record. This time, it's the New Day defending the record and not going for the record. So I hope the Usos do break the record, honestly. That's just me. I think they've had a better run than the New Day did back in 2015, 2016, although the New Day had a very good run as well. They had a great run, but I think the Usos have been better, in my opinion. But anyway, that made me think that they might lose here. And also, I forget to mention, too, there's actually another team that has a longer reign than either of those two teams, and that being fucking Gallus. Not that anyone cares or gives a shit or remembers, but Gallus is Mark Coffey and Wolfgang technically held the NXT UK titles, tag titles, for longer than either of Demolition or New Day. Now, it's on NXT UK. I don't know if that counts or not. Like, for example, Roman Reigns has the longest world title reign of anyone in WWE in the last 25, 30 years. Walter had a longer run than him. And the thing with Walter was that Walter was champion for 2 years and 4 months or whatever. They don't count Walter's run because it was an NXT UK and it's technically not a world championship, I guess, in their mind. Excuse me. I had a brain fart there. But, I guess with Gallus, they don't count that either. And the big asterisk with that was that it was during the pandemic. They didn't defend the championships for like a fucking year because there were no shows to defend them on. So that's the big asterisk. I wouldn't really count their run. I would hope they break that fucking record too, because that record to me is pointless. Just have the Usos be the longest reigning champions of any kind on any brand by having them break that record. They wouldn't even have to hold the championships for that much longer, at least another month. But as I've said before, and the Usos obviously won here, if any other team beats the Usos for those tag titles, that is not Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, what the fuck are we even doing here? That would be booking malpractice. So hopefully that will not be the case. But a very good match here. The Usos win after outside interference from the Imperium. Did not like that. There's a lot of dirty finishes right now, like we see in AEW a lot, because Triple H, Tony Khan want to protect their people. I get it, but if you do it so fucking often, it's just cheap. Like, we need more clean finishes. I thought we got more of that when Triple H first took over. We didn't see that on this show or on Raw this week. We need more of that shit. But anyway, this was a good match, though. And a good SmackDown overall. Like I said, the segments that mattered most delivered, that being the main event, the Strowman in-ring return, and specifically the Sami, Bloodline, Roman Reigns saga that opened the show. That was phenomenal. So if you missed it, check it out. Great stuff. It leaves you looking forward to where we're going to go next. Now, next week's show is kind of a filler show. They announced 3 matches for next week. Shotzi and Bayley, where hopefully Shotzi will get her last name back, but more importantly, her tank back as well. I'm hearing rumblings that's going to be the case, I think, so hopefully we see that next week. We're getting Shotzi and Bayley one-on-one on next Friday SmackDown. We're getting Sami and Solo Sikoa versus Ricochet and Madcap Moss after Sami and Solo beat up Madcap and Ricochet backstage on this show. Kind of follow-up from last week when Ricochet beat Sami and Solo beat Madcap, so we're getting that tag team match. And we're also getting the Hit Row, not the Hit Row, I sound fucking old as shit. Hit Row against the Maximum Male, not the Maximum Male models, Los Lotharios actually, in tag team action. Because Hit Row were like partying all throughout this episode. Lotharios interrupted the party, they crashed the party and attacked Hit Row, so that was the catalyst for next week's match. It was during one of those Hit Row segments that the QR code popped up. I completely missed this. I mean, I pay attention to the shows for the most part. I completely fucking missed this. Thankfully, I watch, for the most part, live, and I caught this on Twitter. So thank you, Twitter, for this. But there was the QR code, a lot like on Monday's Raw, that took you to a website that directed you to coordinates. And I think the word was parasite or something like that. The word means to kill your father, and there was this whole thread on Twitter, people explaining there was a Bray Wyatt promo from like 10 years ago in NXT that explained that he, I think, murdered his father, where he basically admitted to it in character. So it really seems like all signs are pointing to Bray Wyatt. I haven't talked about this a lot. I know we completely forgot to talk about it on the Wrestle Rant Radio on Thursday, and as well as with in my Raw review, in my SmackDown review last week. I don't think I mentioned it. I may have. I don't remember, because it didn't technically happen on the show. If it doesn't happen on the show, I kind of forget about it. But it was another top takeaway from the show. I think people thought when they saw the 923 in the last vignette or Easter egg, whatever, which apparently we're getting more of according to sources from Triple H, which is great. People thought we were getting Bray Wyatt on the show. I mean, I thought originally that might be the case. I'm honestly kind of glad that they're dragging it out and they're getting more buzz and interest out of it, because the vignettes and whatever the fuck they're doing are really fucking cool. But to me, there is no doubt that Bray Wyatt is behind it. If it's anyone else but Bray Wyatt, it would be a massive fucking letdown. But between the Rabbit, the come with me, the line, which sounds weird, the parasite or whatever it was word in that latest little tease last night, it has to be fucking Bray. It's more a matter of when than if we're getting him back. And I hope we get him back in the next couple weeks. I will probably try to be at SmackDown in 2 weeks in Worcester, Mass. Because I wasn't originally planning on going. Bound for Glory's that night, which I was also eyeing on going, but it's just too far and it's not worth it. Worcester's closer. And they also announced on Twitter earlier in the day before SmackDown, Gunther, Sheamus, 2, Intercontinental Championship. That honestly sold me my ticket to that show. So I'm going to try to go to that show in 2 weeks on SmackDown. They're calling it the season premiere. Maybe they'll try to set up more for that show than just that Intercontinental Championship match, which will hopefully close the show, and Sheamus could very well win the title that night. That would be awesome. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And it's one of those things. What did Sheamus do to deserve another shot? Nothing. It's fucking dumb. Like the Acclaimed. But listen, the matches are awesome. But you have to at least explain why they're getting another shot realistically. But whatever. Yes, we're getting that in 2 weeks, and I'm looking forward to that as well. So I'm going to try to be at SmackDown in Worcester in 2 weeks, and if so, we'll have another review the day after that, as well as, actually, I'm not sure. That day, we'll see. I might do a SmackDown review, audio review on Sunday that week, because I'll probably be at New York Comic Con that Saturday. So it's going to be a busy weekend. And that includes Extreme Rules. I may not even be able to watch Extreme Rules live. But it's going to be a wild weekend. Next week, we should be back on Saturday once again with another SmackDown audio review. Until then, guys, have an awesome one. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.